Hello, this is Dr. Grande. Today I will analyze the case of Austin Metcalf and Karmelo Anthony. First, I'll look at the background of this case, move to the timeline of the incident, then offer my analysis. Austin Metcalf lived in Frisco, Texas. This town of 200,000 is just north of Dallas. It is part of the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex. According to one survey, it was the safest city in the United States in 2023. 17-year-old Austin lived with his father, Jeff, his mother, Megan, and his identical twin brother, Hunter. He was a junior at Memorial High School. There he had a 4.0 GPA. He was a linebacker on the football team and voted MVP. Austin was also on the track team. He worked part-time at a pizzeria. Now moving to the timeline of the incident. On Wednesday, April 2, 2025, Austin and his brother Hunter were attending a track meet at David Kuykendall Stadium. The track meet was the University Interscholastic League District Championship. Due to the rain, the track meet was delayed. Competitors moved under tents, which had been deployed in the bleachers. There were separate tents for each high school team. At about 10 a.m., a 17-year-old student from Centennial High School named Karmelo Anthony decided to sit under the wrong tent. He sat down under the Memorial High School tent where Austin was seated. Karmelo's seating choice led to a disagreement between him and Austin. Karmelo allegedly produced a knife, stabbed Austin in the chest, and ran away. The police were notified and started searching for Karmelo. An officer found him in the stadium and approached him. He told him to put his hands up. As the officer closed in, Karmelo said, "I was protecting myself." This statement was made before the officer even asked Karmelo any questions about the incident. As the officer was walking Karmelo off the track, Karmelo said Austin put his hands on him. Karmelo was handcuffed. The arresting officer informed another officer that he had the alleged suspect. Karmelo said, quote, "I'm not alleged, I did it," unquote. It appears as though Karmelo believed these two standings were mutually exclusive, but they're not. An allegation can coexist with actual guilt. It happens all the time. As Karmelo was being walked toward a police cruiser, he asked the police if his actions could be considered self-defense. Referring to Austin, Karmelo also said, quote, "He put his hands on me. I told him not to," unquote. In the back seat of the cruiser, an officer noticed blood on Karmelo's left middle finger. Karmelo asked the officer if Austin was going to be okay. It's not clear if the officer answered or not, but either way, the correct answer would have been no. Austin Metcalf was taken to a hospital where he was pronounced dead at 10:53 a.m. The police spoke to over 30 witnesses who saw the alleged stabbing. One witness, whose account was corroborated by a second witness, had this story to tell. After Karmelo sat down under the Memorial High School tent, Austin told him he would need to move out from under the tent. In response to this comment, Karmelo opened his bag and reached inside, saying, "Touch me and see what happens." Austin then touched Karmelo. At this point, Karmelo invited Austin to punch him and see what would happen. In order to get Karmelo to move, Austin grabbed or pushed him. Karmelo pulled out a black knife. He stabbed Austin once in the chest before running away. Austin grabbed his chest and asked bystanders for assistance. The police were able to recover the knife that Karmelo allegedly used to stab Austin. It was in the bleachers. Karmelo Anthony was charged with murder. At the time I'm making this video, he is being held in jail on a $1 million bond. Now moving to my analysis. Based on statements that Karmelo Anthony allegedly made to the police, he maintained his innocence. It appears as though he's going to argue self-defense. Some media outlets have reported that Karmelo was charged with first-degree murder, but that charge does not exist in the state of Texas. Texas has capital murder and murder. Again, Karmelo was charged with murder. This is the intentional killing of another person. It is a first-degree felony punishable by 5 to 99 years in prison. Premeditation is not an element of the crime. It is not necessary to be convicted of murder in Texas. There is a defense available in Texas called sudden passion, which is a strong emotional reaction provoked by the victim. If proven, sudden passion reduces the murder charge to a second-degree felony. The conviction would still be for murder, but the penalty would be 2 to 20 years instead of 5 to 99 years. This leaves Karmelo with two possible defenses. One, he can argue that this was a case of self-defense, therefore he was not guilty of murder. Two, he can argue sudden passion, which leaves him convicted of murder as a second-degree felony. Clearly, the state of Texas believes that Karmelo is guilty of murder because that is the charge he is facing. This brings me to the question, was Karmelo guilty of murder? Let's take a look at the evidence both for and against the idea that he was guilty, starting with the inculpatory factors. Allegedly, Karmelo was in the possession of a knife when he was at the track meet. In some states, the length of a knife is used to determine whether it is considered a deadly weapon or a dangerous instrument. Texas is a little bit different. In this state, the length of the knife doesn't matter. Rather, they focus on whether the knife was designed to injure and used in a way that could cause death. Under this definition, the knife that Karmelo allegedly possessed would have been a deadly weapon. Karmelo knew that he was not permitted to carry any type of weapon on school property or at school-sanctioned athletic events. What was he doing with a knife? This is consistent with him looking for trouble. Assuming the witnesses are correct about what happened, Karmelo and Austin were involved in a verbal altercation which turned physical. Karmelo sat under the wrong tent, which prompted Austin to direct him to move. One could argue that telling Karmelo to move is not provocation on the part of Austin. At this point, Karmelo said, "Touch me and see what happens," like he wanted Austin to touch him in order to justify a violent response. Karmelo was looking for a fight. Unfortunately, Austin did touch Karmelo, which was a bad idea. Karmelo responded by escalating the situation and inviting Austin to punch him. Austin never punched him, but he did grab or push him. Again, this is all according to the witnesses. This was a bad move by Austin, but his behavior would not have caused serious injury or death to Karmelo. Simply being grabbed or pushed does not necessarily justify the use of deadly force. Karmelo produced a knife and killed Austin without justification. There was no provocation, therefore there was no sudden passion. Moving to the exculpatory factors, one could argue that, if the witnesses were correct about what happened, Karmelo was provoked by Austin. After all, Austin initiated the conversation. Karmelo should not have sat down under the wrong tent, but he wasn't committing a crime. He was in a place he was lawfully allowed to be. Austin should have just left him alone or been more polite. Instead of directing Karmelo to move, he could have simply said, "I think you may be in the wrong seat." If Austin provoked Karmelo, then Karmelo's statement, "Touch me and see what happens," was simply a response to that provocation. When Austin physically touched Karmelo, he further provoked him, which led to Karmelo's invitation for Austin to punch him. Austin continued with his pattern of provocation by grabbing or pushing Karmelo. This put Karmelo in fear for his safety. In this fearful state, Karmelo stabbed Austin one time and ran away. He didn't stab him multiple times. He only used the force he thought was necessary to facilitate his escape. When considering all the evidence in this case, do I believe that Karmelo was guilty of murder? In my opinion, he was guilty of murder with a successful sudden passion defense, meaning he was guilty of murder as a second-degree felony. Austin made physical contact with Karmelo first. I cannot dismiss that as insignificant. It was a critical mistake on Austin's part, which only served to escalate the situation. Austin did not deserve to die because of this, but his behavior did provide Karmelo with a plausible argument for provocation. It is, of course, possible that Karmelo was looking for trouble and wanted to stab somebody that day, but I don't think that can be proven beyond a reasonable doubt with the available evidence. This case really comes down to what the jury will consider to be provocation. Who was the initial aggressor? Was it Karmelo for sitting under the wrong tent, or was it Austin for directing him to move? Maybe the jury will not consider either one of those actions provocation, and they will move to what happened next in the confrontation. Did Karmelo provoke Austin by saying, "Touch me and see what happens," or inviting Austin to punch him? Or did Austin provoke Karmelo when he grabbed or pushed him? For an incident that only took a few seconds, there are quite a few angles which a jury will have to carefully contemplate. What do I think happened in this case? This is just a theory, my opinion. Karmelo was not necessarily looking to kill someone, but he maintained an attitude where he was not going to accept anyone insulting him. This is why he was carrying a knife. He wanted to be ready. When Austin engaged Karmelo over the seating situation, it was just the excuse that Karmelo needed to ramp things up and prove that he was a dominant, tough guy. He challenged Austin to touch him and to punch him, and Austin fell for it. Karmelo now had the opportunity to use his knife. As it turns out, stabbing someone to death is difficult to cope with. Karmelo had a strong emotional reaction after killing Austin, which led to him crying hysterically. Being a tough guy may not seem as appealing now. I think it's pretty likely that Karmelo will be convicted of some type of serious offense and be sentenced to prison. He was unhappy at being labeled an alleged offender. I'm pretty sure the state of Texas will be more than happy to drop the word alleged. Perhaps there will be a plea deal, which spares Karmelo from a conviction of murder as a first-degree felony. Either way, he will have a lot of time to think about the fateful decision he made in a split second in that stadium. Karmelo cannot blame his impulsivity entirely because he did bring that knife with him. If he never had the knife, he never would have killed somebody. Now moving to my final thoughts. This case has led to a lot of misinformation on social media, some of which is coming from those looking to advance a narrative based on race. For instance, they are trying to argue that Karmelo stabbed Austin because Austin was white, or Austin provoked Karmelo because Karmelo was black. Someone even impersonated a law enforcement agency on social media and posted misinformation about this case. Apparently, this person was trying to make Austin look like the bad guy, falsely claiming that he broke Karmelo's cell phone and struck him with his fist. Impersonating a law enforcement agency is illegal and may lead to some problems for whoever did that. One reason I think people get so worked up about cases like this is because they are always looking to prove their side of the argument. Everything that happens, every alleged crime, reinforces their understanding of the world. For instance, if somebody believes that white people routinely provoke black people into fights, they will blame Austin for this incident. If someone believes that black people look for reasons to attack white people, they will see Karmelo as the bad guy. They forget what really matters in these cases is the evidence. Right now, there is no indication that race was a factor in this incident. I think one lesson that can be learned in this case is how impulsive people are all over the place. One never knows when they will encounter someone who has a high level of impulsivity, and one never knows if that person will be carrying a weapon. Unfortunately, there will always be people who seek any excuse to be violent. Those are my thoughts on the case of Austin Metcalf and Karmelo Anthony. Thank you so much for watching. I'll talk to you soon.